Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. No end in sight to mass protests in Serbia after today's resignation of Prime Minister Miloš Vučević. President Aleksandar Vučić is addressing the nation this evening. More on that in a moment, but first, let's see the latest headlines. Denmark's Prime Minister is receiving European support over Trump's Greenland bid. Foreign actors are meddling in European elections. And Poland and Canada sign a nuclear energy cooperation agreement. Serbian Prime Minister Miloš Vučević stepped down on Tuesday, marking the latest concession by the country's government towards protesters who have been taking to the streets for nearly 3 months now. Will this resignation be enough to quell public outrage, or will the rising tensions force pre-term elections? Our reporters Paweł Trzaskowski and Anastasia Janchenko have more.
I have made the final decision to resign from the position of Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia.
Vučević resigned to appease the enraged Serbian society. In November last year, in Novi Sad, a building collapsed, killing 15 people. It happened just 4 months after the lengthy and costly renovation of the 60-year-old building was completed. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back, as Serbians took their discontent to the streets.
The main reason is that people thought and felt and knew that this was because of corruption.
Originally, it was Serbian students who took to the streets, but they were soon joined by other groups: academics, school teachers, farmers. Daily protests continued for close to 3 months in more than 100 cities across the country, to eventually culminate in a 24-hour blockade of one of the main intersections in Belgrade. And another massive protest is expected to take place soon.
Students are already planning the next major demonstration for February 1st. When we were at the demonstrations, these leaflets were being distributed to ensure widespread participation, and the next big demonstration will happen in Novi Sad.
The Prime Minister's resignation was supposed to be a move that would satisfy the protesters. But according to some involved in the protests, it was too little, too late.
I can tell you that we expected this resignation last night, but it didn't happen. So the government ignored the biggest protest yet that lasted for 24 hours.
Other measures were also announced by Serbia's president Aleksandar Vučić, including a major government reshuffle, which might result in the replacement of half of the minister roster, and a debate on confidence in the current government to be held on Wednesday. However, as some of the protesters were arrested and even beaten, calls for major political change are becoming increasingly common.
What we really want is for the prosecutors and judiciary to prosecute those responsible. So these protests will not stop until we see responsibility in court.
This is arguably the biggest political crisis for Aleksandar Vučić, who has served as president of Serbia since 2017. For the moment, he's refusing to step down, despite growing opposition on the streets.
The top brass in Brussels have doubled down on their support for Denmark as US President Donald Trump ratchets up his desire to buy Greenland. These voices join a chorus of others, including those in Washington, railing against Trump's actions. EU correspondent Angela Skudgens has this report.
Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen touched down in Brussels today. It was part of a whirlwind trip across the EU aimed at drumming up support from European allies to stand up to US President Donald Trump as he continues his overtures to acquire the Arctic island of Greenland, which sits in the Danish kingdom. It comes a day after the EU's top foreign policy boss, Kaja Kallas, told reporters that Greenland is not for sale and no negotiations with the US will occur. This rhetoric was doubled down today by the EU's Defence Commissioner, Andrus Kubilius, who told reporters that the EU will stand with Denmark in defending Greenland. Now, when the European Commission was pressed about this and an alleged plan to protect Greenland at a press conference today in Brussels, they did not respond to those journalists' comments, but here is what they had to say instead.
We remain indeed steadfast in our commitment to international law, to a rules-based global order, which is founded on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity, including those, obviously, of the member states of the European Union, including Denmark. The sanctity of borders is a core tenet of international law, applying equally to all nations, irrespective of their size or influence.
Now, these calls for support from Brussels were joined by voices across the transatlantic. Lisa Murkowski is a Republican senator in Washington, and she released a statement with a Danish MEP saying that the Arctic island was not for sale, but open for business. Many are wondering whether the US President Donald Trump just wants to acquire some of those Arctic minerals that sit below the surface of that island. But as the US President is still in the early days of his leadership, many will be waiting to see whether he will act on some of his directives and promises or whether he will let the Arctic island be. My name is Angela Scoogens and I'm reporting from Brussels for TVP World.
And we're staying on the topic. The Danish Prime Minister's day-long tour to promote her plan to better protect Greenland has been well received in Europe. It comes after US President Donald Trump repeated his interest in the semi-autonomous Danish island. John Todd reports on what's at stake and why Greenland is so important.
This is the vast, snowy landscape that has become the focus of international attention, a frozen wilderness that the new US President Donald Trump covets. His son Donald Jr. jetted into Greenland's capital Nuuk in early January, on the day Trump declined to rule out military or economic action to acquire the Danish territory. Trump repeated his interest in the Arctic landmass on his first day in office.
Greenland is a wonderful place. We need it for international security. And I'm sure that Denmark will come along. I think it's costing them a lot of money to maintain it, to keep it.
Greenland is the world's largest island, bigger than France, Germany, Spain, the UK, Italy and Greece combined. Its population of around 50,000 live almost entirely on the coast, while 80% of the land is permanently covered in ice. So why does Trump want it?
This is the gate to Arctic, and as we all know, the Arctic is being in the interest of many countries, including those obvious ones like Canada, like Russia, like Norway, because they've got a presence there, but also new countries like US, like China, who's looking for northern road to Europe, and many European countries.
Adding to its allure, the territory also has a wealth of largely untouched raw materials. These include important minerals and rare earth metals key to new technologies. And in addition to gold and diamonds, there are thought to be huge fossil fuel reserves.
It's access to underwater areas, like marine areas, which for sure have got a huge amount of oil and gas. You know, Northern Atlantic, it's proof of that. And similar deposits should be there, and it's just a priority to reaching those, gives the strategic importance of Greenland.
Greenland was transferred to the Danish crown and integrated into Denmark in 1953 and became self-governing following a 2008 referendum. The territory's Prime Minister, Mette, says the island is looking to strengthen its defence and mining ties with the US, but on its own terms. The President on Saturday told reporters, "I think we're going to have it." This appears to be one of Trump's top agenda items. Whether Greenland becomes the El Dorado of the Arctic and the island becomes a new northern security barrier for the US, only time will tell.
This year we'll see a number of crucial elections taking place all across Central and Eastern Europe. Lessons learned during the last vote in Romania and Moldova have prompted fears of mass foreign interference. It's increasingly easy and cheap to influence election campaigns at scale. Michael van Blommenstein has more.
The increased interference in European elections, most notably in Romania and Moldova, hasn't gone unnoticed. Alarmed by what happened there, the Polish government on Tuesday announced a comprehensive program intended to counteract attempts of outside interference.
Monitoring disinformation, training for campaign staff and for journalists and others engaged in the process, improved security for critical applications and free security diagnostic tools. That is, in a nutshell, what we discussed today.
The outside interference has had an effect. In Romania, the obscure candidate Călin Georgescu came in first place during the first round of Romania's presidential elections last November. The results were annulled after intelligence reports indicated illicit campaign financing for the far-right pro-Kremlin candidate. In neighboring Moldova, voters were outright bribed to vote for the pro-Moscow candidate in October and November. In the end, pro-European President Maia Sandu held on to her position. It has motivated other countries to act.
We take responsibility for the electoral process so that nobody can manipulate elections in Poland.
Securing electoral processes is easier said than done.
It's of course interesting to see people trying.
Owing to technological advancements, the number of bot accounts involved in online election interference is increasing exponentially. Even the disinformation itself is increasingly created using AI, making the output even larger, author and cybersecurity expert Breno de Winter warns.
And there is this fine line between fake news and freedom of speech, that it is kind of hard to really filter that out. And then even if you want to filter something out, the social media companies need to work with you on that one.
The willingness of social media companies to cooperate remains to be seen. Elon Musk, the owner of X, openly endorses the German far-right and pro-Kremlin AfD party.
Hey everyone.
Mark Zuckerberg of Mette announced earlier this month that his platforms will do away with fact-checkers and will work with US President Donald Trump to pressure European governments into relaxing their social media legislation. Meanwhile, interfering in European elections remains an important pillar of Russia's destabilization efforts. The focus has shifted from outright propaganda to more insidious methods.
After the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, the European Union banned most Russian state media outlets in the EU. And ever since that, we have seen Russian propaganda actors shift more to indirect strategies, using, for instance, online influencers to spread pro-Russian disinformation.
Online interference isn't just a question of quantity either. A deepfake of Moldovan President Maia Sandu, which depicted her endorsing a pro-Kremlin candidate while dressed in Muslim clothing, went viral on Facebook in 2023. Fighting online election interference is said to become more of a challenge, not less.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has called the rising popularity of a far-right Alternative for Germany party the biggest political alarm imaginable. The Polish leader was backed by the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau during their meeting in Warsaw on Tuesday. The two Prime Ministers also signed an agreement on nuclear energy. Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
The two prime ministers were all smiles when signing an agreement on the safe use of nuclear energy and Canadian investments in Poland in that field. But they quickly got serious when asked by journalists about the rise of far-right parties in Europe.
It's an incredibly dangerous trend. As a historian, I can't imagine a bigger political alarm than 20% of support for a party like AFD.
The outgoing Canadian Prime Minister, who came to Poland for the anniversary of Auschwitz camp liberation, also warned against history repeating itself.
The hatreds that are dividing peoples across borders in just about every regions of the world are cause for alarm.
Last weekend, thousands of people protested on the streets of German cities against AFD after it had officially launched its election campaign, while the protesters were critical of the AFD's anti-immigrant stance.
All humans are equal. Everyone has the same rights. There are human rights that must be upheld, and that's what we stand up for.
Experts say the anti-immigration policy is the main reason behind the party's popularity.
And the AFD is trying to use that against the other government, against the other parties, saying that they did not address the issues the way they should have.
Germany is preparing for snap parliamentary elections which will take place in late February. The Christian Democratic CDU, currently leading the polls, has so far denied the possibility of forming a ruling coalition with the AFD.
Donald Trump proves he's serious about his election promises. In the last few days, American officials have detained more than 2,300 illegal migrants who now await deportation from the US. This has also raised fears among the Polish diaspora across the Atlantic, as some 30,000 Poles may be forced to leave the country soon. Donald reports.
Hi, Donald John Trump.
It's been exactly 1 week since Donald Trump was sworn in as president, and he's already delivering on a campaign promise to deport illegal immigrants. Since moving into the White House, the new commander-in-chief issued 21 executive orders to tackle the problem of illegal migration.
I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted.
Since Thursday of last week, more than 2,300 undocumented migrants have been detained and slated for deportation. But this is just a drop in the bucket, as it's estimated by the Pew Research Center that about 11 million people, or 23% of the U.S. foreign-born population, were in the country illegally. Trump's promise to deport all undocumented migrants for now seems like an unlikely feat.
The whole thing about recently that everybody talks about people going to get deported, the Polish people, all of the immigrants, they're going to deport 20 million immigrants. I think it's totally insane.
So is the Polish community concerned that they will be targeted by Trump's deportations?
Yes, there are some uncertainties. The most important thing, he wants to deport the people that committed a crime in his country, which that makes total sense.
For now, the primary target is to deport those with a criminal record or having committed a crime. According to the Texas Department of Safety, undocumented immigrants are far less likely to commit crimes when compared to U.S. citizens. But despite this statistic, some Poles are uneasy, especially those in the United States, who have overstayed their welcome under U.S. federal law. This is the message being expressed by Donald Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan.
I can quote him that all illegal immigrants in the United States, not only those who's got some conflict with the law, shouldn't feel cozy.
So how much will this affect the Polish community, and how many Poles might be in the U.S. illegally?
As far as I heard last week, the number, according to the Polish consular services in the United States, is about 30-something thousand people. I think it's a little bit higher, but it's less than 100,000.
So should they worry? We asked Jerzy Sokół, an attorney for the Legal Services Program at the Polish Slavic Center in New York.
They should be very careful. They should not do something, I should say, stupid, like committing any crimes, even small crimes. They should not maybe travel by airplane or bus, should not go to any area close to the border, because they can be, by any chance, apprehended, stopped, and be detained.
The Polish government has informed its citizens in the U.S. that consulates are on standby to help them, but that they weren't expecting any drastic moves.
Representing the Polish pride of
Will the Prime Minister's resignation end mass protests in Serbia, or have things gone too far, to the point where only the president leaving office would appease the students who have demonstrated for the last 3 months? Well, to talk about the latest from Belgrade, we're joined by Ivana Stradna, research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Nikola Čurčin, the president of the Independent Teachers Union of Serbia. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Right, let's start from the most obvious. So, will Vučević's decision to step down as Prime Minister satisfy protesters, or will they continue to call on President Vučić to resign, because it seems as the main demand in the last days? Nikola Čurčin, please.
Yes, well, this is not the main demand, as these protests are not focused on any political figure. They are focused on rule of law and a fight against corruption, because there was a huge catastrophe where 15 people died on main railway station in second biggest city in Novi Sad on the 1st of November. And this station was renovated by the state, spending 65 million euros. And nobody has been held to account. So all the protests that now grew into practically a national movement are focused on rule of law and not on a particular political person. So the students' protests that are supported by everybody will continue until the people responsible are taken to account. So
is President Vučić responsible for the catastrophe in Novi Sad?
This is for the judiciary to say. So focus now is on the prosecutor, probably the main prosecutor of Serbia, Zagorka Dolovac, and all the other prosecutors that need to prosecute this situation, this corruption, this crime that happened. So this is the focus: rule of law, not elections, not any political person.
Mm-hmm. So, but let's talk about people still. Who can replace the Prime Minister? Ivana Stradner, please.
So as we have just heard that Serbian Prime Minister Miloš Vučević has resigned, and in my view that is in part actually an attempt to calm political tensions stoked by weeks of massive anti-corruption protests. So in my view this is just really another Vučić's game to try to calm down the protests and to exchange that for students to give up. But I actually don't think that that is going to resonate with students. Actually, they announced new protests, given that recently another student and another person was hit. There were numerous incidents where Serbian students were attacked, and they acknowledged that, so they are going to continue with protests. And I absolutely agree that this is truly all about the rule of law and corruption, because if you look at numerous reports coming from Freedom House, they actually even classify Serbia as a partially free and a hybrid regime. So it's truly not a democracy.
Mm-hmm. Now, President Vučić addressed the nation only a few minutes ago. He said that in next 10 days he'll make his decision what to do next. That's regarding the formation of the new government. So, is there a possibility that President Vučić will somehow give in to protest demands, to protesters' demands, and form this government with the participation of protesters as well, to make it a sort of a government of a national consensus? Nikola Čurčin, please.
I really don't think that is possible, because it's a pretty clear messages came from many opposition parties that they don't want to participate in this. they are all supporting this rule of law. You see, as my colleague said, there is a lot of problems in previous elections in Serbia, and with OSCE also giving reports with a lot of election fraud. So nobody has the trust that without some sort of an authority that everybody trusts, we can have a new election. And there is absolutely no chance that opposition and the ruling party will make a joint government. This is totally out of the question. There is also some other things that people were talking about, is that maybe President Vučić will resign, but you have to have in mind that he cannot run again for office for the third term as president. So these are a lot of things to consider. But what is going on Friday will probably accelerate things, because there is the biggest protest yet will be held on Friday this week in Novi Sad, where blockage of 3 Danube bridges is planned, and also the tens of thousands of students from Belgrade will walk to Novi Sad on the highway, which is around 100 kilometers in between. So there will be practically a blockade of the main nation's highway on late Thursday and Friday, and there will be a huge protest in Novi Sad on Friday. So the students have said their demands are not met, and they want responsibles to be prosecuted. After that, we will see.
Mm-hmm. You said that protests are purely apolitical, but still, students chant for...
they're very political, sorry.
Students chant for the president to resign. There's no question about it. It's happening. And I'm wondering whether protests have promoted some new political leaders, because in case of President Vučić stepping down from office, a void will take place in Serbia, because you said that opposition is too weak to take over the power in Serbia. There would be no clear leader. So what are the possible scenarios for Serbia? Ivana Strada, please.
My concerns is that Vučić has been playing the West like a fiddle by always putting new narratives. And one of the latest efforts that he plans to do is basically to rebrand his political party by establishing a new movement, something called like a national all people's movement, something actually similar that Putin did back in 2011 to completely rebrand a party, which is basically to buy more time and to try again to buy more time from the West, to tell them that he needs more time, but he is on the horizon to bring Serbia towards the West, which is absolutely ridiculous. Because if you listen to carefully Vučić's statements, he does not want Serbia to be a member of the European Union, but he always emphasizes how Serbia should be on the European Union path, which actually just bolsters and helps his government. So that's my main concern about the latest game that Vučić has recently announced. And I think it's very important to put in the context of the timing, because the United States recently imposed sanctions on Russian gas in Serbia, which has caused a lot of problems to Vučić, and he has until mid-March to sort it out. He has a lot of pressures coming from the West, but also from Russia. He is in a very uncomfortable situation, and that's precisely why he's trying actually to divert the attention by creating all those sorts of movements, etc. I just want to emphasize one other thing, which is President Vučić is very, very good at playing all those games, and he also, on one side, he's trying actually to make sure, the protests are peaceful, etc., and they do not escalate. But on the other hand, he also does benefit from escalation on the streets of Belgrade, because he can use that geopolitically to divert, his attention. So I'm very, very concerned about the safety of students in the near future.
Lastly, President Vučić seems okay with the idea of referendum to determine his role in Serbia. Now, what would be the consequences of such a popular vote? Nikola Čurčin, please.
Legal consequences by constitution do not exist. So this is just another political trick. I think it's important to say that although the strength in this movement that is happening does not come from the opposition parties, there is a strong viable option actually forming with the students and the academic. So academic, this is very important because it's different between the protest of '96 against Milošević, where the academic professors were not on the side of students. Here, there is a strong unity by the university professors and their students. So this is a viable option that is growing into some, let's say, somebody who will have trust of the people to make this transitional period, if there is an election.
Well, then time will tell. Ivana Stradner, Research Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, and Nikola Čurčin, Vice President of the Independent Teachers Union of Serbia, were our guests this evening. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more news and comments here on TVP World.